maybe I could start basically. So indeed in the agenda it's called like a roundtable, but I would rather call it like further discussion about the work that is done within the TD3.9 and the IPX program in regards of MVDC. And I would like first to thank the 3 projects for the detailed presentation of this morning. I think it was quite in depth and it gave a lot of opportunity to understand really what was done within the 3 projects. I know that between FUNDRES and IN2STEMPO, you had the chance in the past to exchange already in the technical content. So maybe there were a bit less of news in this regard, but I think for MVDC, from one side to the other, it was very interesting to see what was done in regard to smart grid. So thank you again, the 3 project for your presentation this morning. My first question I would like to raise, and actually this is for the 3 projects, is regarding the synergies and the duplication of work. So we have seen that we are touching quite a similar topic, not exactly the same voltage, etc. But at the end, I truly think that there might be some synergies between the work that you have done and maybe some duplication. So the synergies may be the positive word, duplication the negative word, but at the end, this is the same concept at the end. So I wanted to hear a bit from the 3 project. How do you see that? Because it's true that when we are writing a call for proposal, I don't say we do it in a silo, but we do it indeed with a certain view. So when the call for the MVDC IPX project has been posted, I think 2 years ago, maybe it hasn't been fully aligned with the work on TD3.9, just to ensure that we have full synergy, etc. And I will give you an example, and this is the JU is bad, I would say. I see that the project do not have as a complementary action any of our 2 actions in IP3, so FUNDRES and IN2STEMPO. What I truly think that could have made sense to have this complementarity as we have between FUNDRES and IN2STEMPO. So I would like to have a bit your view following the presentation this morning on that, synergies, duplication of work, and afterwards it will obviously lead to another topic that I would like to discuss, is the exploitation of results. How do you see the work that is done within the 2 projects? Interesting for your own activity, exploitable for further TRL, exploitable for other activities in the future. So I don't know who wants to start with that.
Yeah, from Sébastien, from my point of view, you are right, of course. There is a complementarity between IN2STEMPO project on FACS and FUNDRES, because IN2STEMPO is regarding the problem on AC power supply, and they want to introduce power electronics for the power supply of the AC lines. And on the other hand, FUNDRES is focusing on DC power supply. Of course, there is a common point, which is the part regarding the modular multi-level converter, because this is the same topology which can be used in the both project. Of course, not with the same voltage rating, and not exactly with for the same application, because in one hand we have the power supply require an AC-AC converter, and on the other hand AC-DC converter, but the topology is similar. And of course, if we consider the project MVDC-ERS from the IPX program, there are a lot of topics which are common, and also the study are focusing on the same topic, the power supply and the solid state transformer, and also the integration of renewable sources on the railway line. So I think three months ago, when I discussed with Pietro Tricoli, I was surprised to discover that in the Shift2Rail project, there is something which is completely similar with FUNDRES. Of course, it's a little bit different because in on some realization of prototypes, so that there is a difference on this aspect. So I don't know what is the point of view of Pietro and the other colleagues.
Well, I think I'm backing what you're saying. I think it's clear that from the research point of view, there is a lot of interest for DC supply. So perhaps that could be one of the reasons why DC supplies have been funded twice. I think we started it slightly earlier than FUNDRES because we started in 2018 around. And at that time, one of the main topics of the call was using the rail traction as a backbone and a backbone for mobility. And there is, in parallel, a lot of research ongoing on MVDC grids, not for traction, for replacing the distribution grids. And that's actually was the idea behind the MVDC-ERS, to integrate this the traction power supply into the ongoing DC distribution grids, and where these aspirations is currently ongoing for non-railway people. There is a belief that they might represent the distribution systems of the future, and then we added the railway bit to this. On the other hand, I think FUNDRES is pretty much focused on the traction aspect, which is then a sort of a next step of what is currently DC traction electrification systems, which main focus of feeding the trains. So the underpinning technologies, they are similar. So we are both developing MMC, but that is a good thing because that means that independently we came across the same solution for the same problem. So if you're talking about large scale multi-megawatt medium voltage converter, this is probably an agreement that we are talking about a very, very robust topology, albeit all the difficulties behind MMCs that are well known about large complexity, perhaps lower reliability, perhaps lower efficiency or whatever. But I think that nowadays, if we're talking about this level of power and this level of voltages, we have a very, very few rivals for now, until new semiconductor devices will be available and much higher voltages than they are today. And in that case, then we will probably need to start again from square one and rediscuss again topology. But as far as today, we are probably all in agreement that this is a very strong candidate. And I think that as this result has been confirmed independently by two research teams, and actually we didn't have any discussion until a couple of months ago. So after 2 years of research, nearly 2 years of research, I think that is a very remarkable result, which is then confirming that perhaps this is the right choice. So I am really pleased to see these synergies, and in this case, the risk of duplication is actually welcome because, as I said, there are these two independent teams that are confirming the same thing. So that is pretty much a clear message to other researchers working in the area.
Thank you, Pietro. And maybe now with IN2STEMPO, because indeed, FUNDRES and MVDC-ERS, you are maybe more at the low TRL due to your, I would say, profile as a university, small company, etc. While in IN2STEMPO, we are maybe more the integrator, the one that maybe will bring at higher TRL the maturity of this development. Maybe we bring to the market as well this development. I know that within IN2STEMPO, we are aiming to reach TRL 5, so it means there is still some work to do before implementing in operation. But Mahmoud, what is your view based on the development that have been done there, and how do you see it could be exploitable?
Yeah, so basically, initially, the open call about DC projects was a little bit challenging because IN2STEMPO was treating mainly AC systems, and the open call was about DC and how to use converter in the same manner as we are planning to use them in AC. The way I see it, the common background between what we do in IN2STEMPO work package number 3 and what our colleagues and collaborators here are doing in DC systems is basically, so the first part would be, as Professor Ladou said, the integration of converters, active components in the electrification system. So we are doing the same thing. We are trying to optimize the AC system. So using similar multi-level converters to do basically to optimize the existing system. So obviously we are talking about DC in one project and AC in another, but to keep in mind that the interface with the upper grid, so the transmission and the distribution system or network, is basically treated by the same requirements. We have mainly the same requirements with the upper grid, and we are trying to optimize this connection. So so the way I say that, for example, in IN2STEMPO WP3, we are treating SFC, so we are trying to implement this this new system in 50 Hertz. And SFC will act on disturbances on the upper grid. And in the same manner, our colleagues working on DC, on optimizing DC systems, we're trying to do the same thing. So optimizing the actual DC, either in 9 kV or another level. So we share the same kind of approach, and it would be really good to compare maybe the impact of an optimized DC, either in 25 kilovolt or 9 kV, with regards to an optimized AC system. So yeah, it would be the additional synergy that we can think of between these projects. I don't know if you share the same view regarding the synergies between, because it was initially challenging to find the common background of collaboration, but I think we managed to find the appropriate common subjects in order for us to find so we managed to do it, and I think the good idea is to see by the end of the project what would the comparison maybe from a transmission system operator point of view of the impact of each optimized system.
Okay, and Mahmoud, as you are from SNCF, you know if there is interest from your company to go further in this development? Yeah, so we actually, so in France we have two main electrification system, 15 kilovolt, 1500 1.5 kV DC system, and 25 kilovolt mainly with 2 times 25 kilovolt. So obviously we have the interest in both systems. In DC, for example, we are trying to push the idea of 9 kV to demonstrate maybe something, especially regarding renewable sources of energy. So we're trying to build some stepping stones in order to maybe in the future, 20 or 30 years, maybe converse to an optimized DC system. So we have an interest from this side, and from the 25 kilovolt. Similarly, we are trying to find ways to optimize 25 kilovolts, actual 25 kilovolts. So yeah, we have interest in both systems, and
And the common background also is the interface with the upper grid. As I presented in my presentation this morning, we know that in France, several nuclear power plants will shut down in the near future. So we'll have an impact on short circuit power and the capacity of the utility grid to feed the consumers with the same power, short circuit power. So obviously, the transmission system operator will try to maintain the level of service, but we have to, let us say, we have to bring our part to the work in order to facilitate this shift in power grid. So yeah, we have obviously both interests in both systems.
Okay, thank you very much. And so when we prepared the meeting with Philippe, there is few suggestions of discussion that Philippe proposed, and there is one actually that particularly raised my interest, is the migration aspect, because when we are developing new solutions, there is always after the market uptake, and when we talk about market uptake, this is always from a situation A to situation B. And you mentioned that indeed in France, you have two parts of the network, one in 25 kilovolt and one in 1.5 kVDC. And so we're talking here about an optimized 9 kVDC. How do we do the transition from 1.5 kilovolt DC to the optimized 9 kVDCs with the MVDC actually? So what is your view with that?
So obviously we cannot go directly from 1.5 kV to 9 kV DC systems from an infrastructure point of view only. So we have to build some steps along the way. So as presented by Professor Philippe Ladoux, so we have some ideas, like for example, making a feed parallel feeder for the DC line. Maybe begin including solid-state transformers and DC converters, and this would be a stepping stone to the total migration, but it would not be the only problem in such conversion, in such migration. We have not we haven't treated the problem of locomotive and traction units, because today we know that traction units can operate in Europe on 25 kilovolt, on 1.5 kV, 3 kV, and this certainly something I think in the near future, in order to us to demonstrate the feasibility of such migration, we should tackle this aspect with traction unit owners and and operators. But yeah, we think of many ways to update and migrate the infrastructure. We can maybe think of a step making a hub for renewable sources, as presented by our colleagues also from FUNDRES. But yeah, so it will not be easy, that's for sure. And but we have several ideas in doing in making this migration. But yeah, I think the major not treated problem today or point, the rolling stock issue, how to make the shift. Is the rolling stock ready today? Will it be ready in 20 years? Is it something feasible, realistic? So it's some question we need to talk about, I think, for DC, at least for DC.
Sure. And I think you point the right topic. I mean, when a locomotive is put into market, now this is at least for 30 years. So unless we go with a retrofit of the locomotive, but regarding the traction, retrofitting the locomotive is quite an expensive, I would say, investment. And taking into account at the other end, but the CO2, I would say, constraint that we have in terms of quality, the greening, etc., cannot wait 30 years neither, to be implemented. How do you see that actually? Do you think that there will be some research that will be needed from the traction point of view, from the rolling stock point of view, to see how we can, I would say, optimize the retrofitting of the current tracking system in order to, from one side, from the infrastructure point of view, deploy the 9 kilovolt DC, and to have obviously the current locomotive. So I'm not talking about the new one, but the one that have been into service a few years ago, able to operate on the upgraded network.
Yeah, definitely. I think it would be very interesting and needed step to investigate the feasibility. Maybe just talking about the place, the free place in the locomotive itself to put all these new components. I think it is a very good idea for next phases of maybe of Shift2Rail to begin investigating from a very low TRL level these aspects. So yeah, it's a very important step, because if we find an issue or a non-feasibility, may I say, in this subject, so we have to determine the feasibility of the rolling stop we don't have to wait until 30 years to begin investigating this aspect. So it's very important.
Pietro, I don't recall, in your project, have you been also addressing partially this aspect from the rolling stock perspective, or it was only for the infra? I don't have in mind.
We are looking on the rolling stock as well for the power electronics transformer to step down the DC voltage to the standard level for traction packages. Yeah, we do. But I think also in FUNDRES they are doing this aspect, which is of course is necessary if you switch from an AC supply to a DC supply. The sensible way of reducing the voltage without necessarily revolutionizing completely motor drive is what you need. Albeit, with 9 kilovolt, you might think about having a 6 kilovolt motor, which this is something industrially available. So perhaps that could be another chapter. You don't necessarily need to think about a complicated PET to get the supply for the traction packages, but you might think about a medium voltage drive for rolling stock, which could be another interesting research topic. I'm not sure has been explored really much, because traction motor I've considered a bit consolidated right now, and the main pushes are towards replacing induction motors with permanent magnet motors, but perhaps the step towards medium voltage motors has not been explored a lot so far, I think.
I think that the big issue regarding a medium voltage drive for the rolling stock is to have an integration of the converter, because you have a small space on board of your traction unit, and on the other hand you have to take into account the isolation of your system. So this is a big issue. And also I think that a lot of research work are necessary regarding also the motor isolation. But I think that it is possible to go in this direction. Of course, the solution of the solid state transformer could be used in a transition period to update the existing rolling stock in the frame of renewing of the rolling stock. You can install a cabinet on your train with a solid state transformer, and then your train is able to run on a medium voltage DC contact line, and you keep the same voltage for the traction inverter and the motor. So it could be also a transition period, and probably it will push also the development of the solid state transformer. I think that the solid state transformer is very interesting for the 15 kilovolt 16 hertz power supply, and I know that of course ABB has developed several years ago a prototype, and they demonstrate the feasibility, but the market was not ready to accept such a converter. But now probably the market is more open in this way. We have the development of silicon carbide power modules, and then they offer the possibility to increase the switching frequency and reduce the volume of the transformer. So it could be interesting, but probably I suppose that Drazen, who was involved in this project with ABB, can complete my answer.
Yeah, I mean, I can comment. I think Mahmoud was very careful using the word feasibility. I would say everything we do today is feasible, but the question is of a business case. And following back on this story of Philip, lots of work was done in Alstom, lots of work was done in Bombardier, Germany back in days. We in ABB also, when I used to be in ABB more than 10 years ago, have really worked hard to get this into the market. And the reality was just that nobody was interested. So there was a technology, it was demonstrated, but of course it came with a certain price tag. And the price tag was higher than a solution that works today and everybody's happy with it. And that suddenly causes a problem. Okay, who pays the bill? And nobody wants to do that. And we really could not get anybody, talking here Switzerland, interested even to do a small 5, 6, 10 locomotives kind of installation. And then you come to the train manufacturers. They sell trains, they know for what they can sell, and whoever buys the train, honestly, I don't think it cares whether it's a silicon carbide or it's a thyristor. As long as it delivers performance as promised, it's a good train. And then your network, who's going to pay the bill of changing all of that? It has to start from somewhere. So we are into this never-ending kind of a loophole where we in academia, we propose new technologies constantly. That's our role. And you guys try to make your system up and running every single day. So we have to find the time for a change and transformation. And I have a feeling like that now situation is much better in the China maybe, where they have money to do these crazy demos. They get funds and they can do demo sites and places. And they have done 2 MVDC demo sites and concluded we don't do anymore. We do LVDC. We cannot make money. It works, but you cannot make money. It's as simple as that. The business numbers are not there. So it means us, maybe academia, has to continue developing 10, 20 years to use your timescale, Mahmoud, of new technologies before those technologies would reach a level of ready to commercially be exploited with the financial benefits. Philip mentioned silicon carbide devices. Yes, they are better, but your converter is 5 times more expensive. And somebody must be ready to accept that. If you are not ready to do that, I mean, we can just continue doing lots of stuff. And high voltage semiconductor devices, 10, 15 kilovolts, very few people need that. But it's a research which is active. It's a technology can go there. Just we need to find where it's actually addressing the problem that we cannot address today. So and coming back to the original question from you, Sebastian, on a synergies, I think that every project tries to move a traction market or an area a little bit forward. But of course, it's a variety of things: AC, DC, 1.5, 3 kV. Tramsa 750. Switzerland is also very specific. I'm here in a 16.7 hertz system. It's a slow moving system. Let's not use a train. Trains go fast, but.
I don't know. Go ahead, Emmanuel.
Yeah, I just wanted to add. So let us hear maybe from if we have any members from rolling stock operators. Is this something feasible? How do you see this the potential migration in rolling stock when we talk about integrating new converters in existing routing stock in a retrofit manner. Is this something that, from your experience, I know that we have our colleague here from SNCF, Mr. Didier Fougier. Do you think this idea of migrating rolling stock to 9 kV is something realistic? And if it was the case, at what time scale do you see it? Is it something that will happen in the 30 years, 20 years, 40 years? What do you think of this migration idea?
This is a very good question. Thank you.
Do you have your crystal ball, Didier?
I will try. First, maybe we could have an historic point of view. Looking at French history, for the first 25 kV lines in France, the story began with 4 locomotives which were complete prototypes, and 4 EMUs which were complete prototype. And I think it took at least 40 years in order to have a general application on rolling stock with dual voltage systems. So I think this kind of migration was nearly, as I said, 40 years long. Now we have a new approach for traction converters. As maybe you have seen that in most countries, you have middle life operations on converters in order to completely have a new converter on trains. So I think it could be possible to see a quicker migration based on this new kind of maintenance on traction converters, and this kind of migration could go quicker, I think. But it's as Philippe said, it's from my crystal ball, and it's for me very difficult to justify these times. Another thing to take in account is that for now, a rolling stock operator only buy trains by tender. So if infrastructure manager imposed a new voltage, it will be taken into account for call of tender. But if it's only, how could I say that? If it's only what the operator wants, without a complete strategy of migration, it will be very difficult to be accepted. In fact, to buy a train with with a new voltage possibility that could not be used in a small time or very quickly. I don't know if I'm clear enough, but I think it's now a big problem for railway operators to have a strategic way of thinking in order to define this kind of converters, which will not be applicated for operation in the next few weeks or few months. So for me, it's now very difficult. And as I said at the beginning, if we look further in the past, it was a bit easy because rolling stock operator on infrastructure manager was only the same entity, the same society. So all decisions were taken with the both point of view in the same direction.
I would like actually to comment on what you said, Didier, and also about the interesting remarks of Dresden just before, and that will lead to my next question actually. So when we have a solution, I would say there is two possibilities to deploy it. I would say it's either the market is taking it, so it means that there is, from a business perspective, it is fully variable, and so it will be deployed. The second option, this is per regulation, meaning that one day someone at European level, at national level, we said any system that should be put in place in service before 2020, after 2025, should have, I would say, an energy efficiency of this level. And so it means that the solution that are existing for the moment cannot be deployed and should be less consuming solution. So basically the one that we have there. Obviously, to take such a decision as per regulation, we need to have a solution that is available. We cannot say tomorrow I want planes that do not use fuel and they have to be electric and it has to be done in 2025. You cannot come with that because there is no technical solution. So one of the main points, if you want to deploy per regulation some solution, this is to have a feasibility. And when I say feasibility, obviously it cannot be a proof of concept. It has to be mature enough, demonstrated in a, I don't say large scale, but in, I would say in a, yeah, in a good operational environment to say, okay, we have something that is working, we have been demonstrated it, and this is ready. And so it is to this question, how far are we to demonstrate in large scale, I would say, this potential solution? And do we have a perspective, a view about the cost that could bring, that we need to deploy a large scale demonstrator and the time that we need in order to deploy it? Because both money and time will obviously talk if you want to take a decision in this regard.
If I can maybe just to jump to, because you asked something. I mean, it's I think the question is always, you know, what is the goal? Is a goal to have at any price a technology A in use, or the goal is a more visionary or reachable, where you say we want to optimize what the energy efficiency, let's say, of a propulsion system. And now I'm recalling myself, 2012, when I was in industry in ABB, advertising this solid state transformer solution, and I participated in a conference in a railway sector session, and I presented what we have done, how good it is, the best in the world, one and only, you know, everybody should buy it. And then comes a speaker after my talk from Japanese railway, and he presents much more energy savings than I presented by simply replacing lighting in every coach from incandescent with the LED lights. And we have invested tons of money to achieve energy efficiency improvement in a highly complex way by going and replacing classical drivetrain with the solid state transformer. And there comes a gentleman and says, no, just 100 lights, you replace them, at the end of the year energy bill is better. So I think we have to be, you know, open and objectively looking, what is our goal? Better systems, reliable systems, more efficient systems. And of course, the best technology will survive. And maybe a fancy technology will be killed by the primitive, but today available, feasible, ready to install low maintenance technology. And that makes it hard to change, especially because it was already mentioned. My colleagues here in Switzerland, they make traction converters, that's ABB traction. But then they sell it to the Stadler. Okay, Bombardier is doing, well, doesn't do anything right now. And then they sell this to the network operators. So there is only 3 levels of ownership, and everybody is looking at its own bill of material, energy efficiency cost, total cost of ownership, reliability. It's all money. It's all money, and the minimum working technology is the one that is the best one.
If I can add to what Dred say, I think he's perfectly right. You know, sometimes you just need to look at what is the right innovation. But if you think about the LED bulbs, you know, that wasn't necessarily, it wasn't developed for railway, but it has an impact on railway. But if you think about the amount of research that is spent to develop LED lights, that is massive, and then the impact has been seen in every market and it's changed, revolutionized completely the way that we do lights. So the railway traction benefited from this research indirectly, but it was applied, and perhaps it had much major impact than the one that was focused directly on changing the traction system. So I think really the key here is innovation sometimes can be useful, but not all the time. So I think it's good to try to do the best that we can, but also important to look around to what other industries or other industrial fields are doing, because sometimes there are some synergies outside the railway which could really make the difference without necessarily thinking about what we are doing in our own field. So and if we look at what's happening, you know, into the power generation has changed dramatically. So they have reduced their CO2 emission by a lot, and they were the most polluting kind of subsystems, and now they aren't. And it's now transport who is under the spotlight. So transport is the one that needs to be decarbonized as soon as possible. So what is the right way? Well, difficult to do, but I think that every solution is trying to tackle this. For example, you know, adding renewables or integrating transport with renewables, whatever, that would enable this transition. And it might not be the power electronics transformer, perhaps it will not, it might be something else. But I think that there is this need now, and I'm sure the EU is pushing towards this. Everyone is pushing towards this, and this is the big challenge, you know, decarbonizing transport. And albeit railways, they produce only 2% of CO2 emissions. It's nearly nothing. I don't know, for some reason they are considered very bad, probably because they still consume some fossil fuel. So they want railway to become cleaner, more than they already are. But it's definitely here is a big challenge, and perhaps some of this technology or maybe something else could help to answer this challenge.
Yeah, of course, if we have a look in France on the production of electrical energy, we have to reduce the production from a nuclear plant, and then we have to install a lot of renewable sources, and then the development of MVDC network to have an interconnection of the renewable sources is a scenario which is also considered by the French TSO in France, which is RTE, and so it could be also a synergy between their project and the project FUNDRES and the solution of medium voltage DC power supply, which is also supported by the French railways.
Yeah, exactly. I would like to add also, Philippe, that yeah, just to give an example also when we are trying to sell a new technology. For example, from a practical way, I go to the region that the city that operates an existing traffic line. So if the traffic line is not electrified, I can think of selling different technologies. For example, I can sell the region. I can tell them, look, I have two systems I can suggest: new electrification and an innovative system, etc. Or another type of electrification. And if the city has the money to do it, I think it will not pose any big issue. However, when we talk about migration, in every migration project, there is some
more difficulties, would I say. For example, a line operating under 1.5 kilovolt. If I want to migrate it directly to 3 kV, an existing technology today, just to sell additional performance on the line, the city will tell me, look, the idea is great. Obviously, it will lead to better quality, power quality, but I don't have the money to do it, and I'm afraid because the time frame is very difficult to transform the existing line to a new one. On the other hand, if I go and tell the city, look, in the first step, I can think of adding some energy hubs, renewable sources, connecting them to the existing 1.5 kV. I can maybe put a feeder operating on 9 kilovolt. So if I can think of a way to sell my future technology by integrating small bricks in it, I think it is a very efficient way to sell a new technology. So instead of telling the city, look, I want to migrate all the line, I can tell the city, yeah, look, I have one small brick. I can operate some renewable sources on this site, inject them to enhance power quality. In 10 years, I can add additional converter to maybe add an additional site. And if we can reach a scenario like this, progressive scenario to migrate, I think it is the right way to sell a new topology, a new technology like 9 kV. But yeah, I think it is the appropriate way to do it.
But this what you're saying, Mahmoud, that's I think maybe what the Didier said. I mean, 20 years ago, right? Roughly 20 years ago, a retrofitting project started all around Europe to replace GTO with the IGBT. And the IGBT was already known for 20 years. So it's not like that we took a fresh semiconductor. We had it, and it took 20 years before GTO got replaced. Nowadays, last few years, I've noticed with the lean pack packages being sort of systemized between Mitsubishi, Hitachi, ABB, Infineon, lots of traction converters started being upgraded and leaving the 62mm Econo pack into a new semiconductor packaging. Luckily, silicon carbide is kind of supposed to come at the 3.3 kV class in the same package, but the price is prohibitive now. I mean, maybe industry gets it better than my prices, but it is really hurts whenever you have to pay for it. And this, what you say, step by step, is definitely one way forward. So that means if we come back to this topic, solid state transformer, you know, and let's just call it a new type of converter. If a train from outside is not changed anyway, and it's just the inside has a new technology, there is a maybe chance that somebody will really say, okay, we buy this new train, it has a different color, whatever. But this, what you come back, infrastructure. It's same like one has to look into electric vehicle sector. Some company says we make vehicles and I don't know who will charge it. Some companies like Tesla says, no, we install infrastructure and then you buy our car and you charge for free. So it's just a matter, who takes a lead in which way. Of course, we are in Europe, so maybe our culture is not American entrepreneurship in the same way. But, definitely there needs to be an action of some sort, happening in different fronts.
Yeah.
That's right. And just to go back on my initial point, because I saw you, Drazen, and you, Pietro, but I don't say convinced, but not jumping, I would say, on that regarding the large-scale demonstrator. So from the current perspective that you had, and especially with your experience, Drazen, for the past years, how about that? Do you see it makes sense to bring it at the larger demonstrator, what is currently done within the TD3.9? Or you think that based on the current situation, maybe this is the best that we have reached in terms of feasibility to see what could be the cost benefit of our solution, and maybe we're at the end here and it doesn't make sense to bring it further. So what is your view?
It's a matter of a reassurance, claiming that the technology works. but not having a real-time evidence that everybody can see, it simply doesn't convey the message of a trust as a demonstration, can do. Doing a demonstration, of course, it's always a question of cost. Somebody must pay the bill, whether this is a large-scale EU or it's a large SNCF or when ABB did it, it was completely ABB financed because it was just reduced to the converter, and then we approached SBB in Switzerland, and they were kind enough to give us a small shunting locomotive for free because it was for scrapyard. And we took out of it a propulsion train, and we installed inside a solid-state transformer. And then we were let to operate on the network, but not really, because we were just shunting things around the Bern, not really able. It's a shunting locomotive. You cannot go on a main line. It doesn't go fast to start with, and let alone cannot pull really too much. And in China, I'm noticing that there is lots of these things, of course, governmentally sponsored. And these are like a make it or break it type of deals. You put lots of money, you stress technology, you try to be objective. You have to be objective. If you're sentimental, you're going to bankrupt everybody. But if you're objective, this works, this is good, this is bad, this can make money, this is not reliable. That's how you get the winners out. And sometimes those winners are not always the newest technology, but then you at least know what one must improve for that technology to become competitive. And I feel like in Europe these days, it's not really easy to get these demos. I think the perception of industry, the culture has changed over the last 10, 15 years. There is not really money for that. Research is considered expensive. We are witnessing research centers being closed of main industrial players. Yeah, personally, I don't find it very, very encouraging, considering that I produce a bunch of PhDs who are supposed to do research in Europe, and then, where do they go? It's a question. I'm not trying to be apocalyptic and pessimistic. Definitely, we have to just be realistic about how to get technology into a commercial use. It's a long way forward.
Yeah, and I think if I can add, to this, the full-scale demonstrator is also the difficulties of all the safety approval and procedure. If you want to work on a live railway, it's not something that you can do easily, and it's very hard that you can get the safety case approved, because the railway needs to carry passenger, and you can't afford to have disruptions, because that means money they have to pay for compensation, and possibly even risking lives if things go wrong. So this sort of project, they most of them, they tend to remain at the lab level, which is everything is simpler and safer to do, and whatever demonstrator needs to be carefully planned. For example, in a test track, where is a separate environment, segregated environment, is perhaps a bit more feasible. Or sometimes go for tram lines, because tram lines are considered a bit more accessible, rather than mainline railway, where all the safety and all the systems that go around, ancillary systems around the railway to make it work, they are much more strict and difficult to be satisfied, especially when you are playing with a system like power, where a lot of things can go wrong, and the trains are really sensitive, and the infrastructure is really sensitive to harmonics and transient and stuff like that.
Yeah, I am in favor of a demonstrator. Yeah, we need a site for a test where we can improve the technologies. It's very important to go on this way. And regarding the test in a real life, I think that in France, but also in other countries in Europe, we have small lines with where the rail traffic is very small, and it's easy to to test the new electrification system, because on this line, all the rolling stock is a diesel with diesel engines. So we can install the new electrification system, and first we can start the test during the night. It's possible to do that, but of course we need a strong support, and I think this is also the role of the European Union to suggest to go in this direction.
Yeah, I would like also to add. Sorry, Sebastian. I would like also to add that because we are very infrastructure managers. Because the transmission, I think that we need maybe a little push or help from bigger grids, power grids, especially transmission system networks and operators, because so they are already using some of the technologies we want to integrate in this in the railway world, and I think a good maybe push to the infrastructure manager in accepting or beginning and integrating these new technologies is a little help or push from the transmission system network and the operators, because they already have the experience, they already have maybe the interest in extending their technologies inside of our network. And I think it would be a lot of help also to have their back and their shared interest in these technologies, and in any new feeding technology. So yeah.
Mahmoud, could I ask a question?
Yes, please. Yes.
When you did your hypothetical exercise, you go to town and you offer
solutions. Yes.
I mean, clearly in this kind of market segment today, there is a lots of, especially for a trams or even trains, this last mile concept and lots of battery powered vehicles. How that fits into the SNCF infrastructure, the big story?
The trams, or
well, let's say battery powered railway segment.
Yeah. So what I did when I gave the example of the city wanting to upgrade this system. So basically, I'm working at SNCF Réseau. So SNCF Réseau is a big company. One thing that you should know about is that every city, every region in France is managed by a part of SNCF Réseau. So this part of SNCF Réseau decides of the investments to do in the region. They have budgets, annual budgets, decade budgets, and they must respect this budget. So they make several studies to forecast the evolution of the traffic, railroad traffic. And yeah, they want to enhance maybe the power supply or the infrastructure in order to answer this increase in traffic. And yeah, to answer your question, I can go to the region by selling a research project, telling them, yeah, I can fund a part of this. You will have an interest in integrating this battery and yeah, a battery in this region. But the main idea is that they won't accept the investment unless you prove that it is viable and it will answer the evolution and the forecast of the evolution of the traffic evolution. So so I don't know, to answer, what was your answer, your question? Sorry, Drazen, exactly.
So how to whether in order to building the new line or reinforcing the line, say it's a city, because that seems to be a city topic where for a visual pollution people don't want to have lines, and then the trams are being increasingly, maybe not increasingly, maybe I'm exaggerating, but having ability to go from A to B without a panto being connected by the battery that will be charged, recharged. How much of that is happening in France? Maybe I ask the question generally.
Yeah, generally. So we were talking about novel projects, some using technologies that are not that common in France. So for example, we have some ideas about hydrogen trains. So we know in Germany, I think they already installed hydrogen trains running on hydrogen. In France, we are trying to implement other type of technologies, trains running on batteries. It is something that we try and integrate, but it's not. It doesn't have the. It doesn't give the insurance to infrastructure manager in the region to apply it, because it's relatively novel system. It has a lot of risks. It's not something that it is common, so we don't necessarily know what to expect in the future. So that's why it's a little bit difficult to push these kind of technologies, new technologies. For example, battery trains. I'm currently working on a project in France to try and integrate battery trains and to electrify some part of a line to make it running. So it's partial electrifications. So it's currently under study. But in my experience working on this kind of project, I already see that it's very difficult to push these ideas in the region. They are new, and so we have to be very careful when we go and sell these type of technologies. We have to make sure that that the technology is ready from an integration point of view. I'm not talking about technology readiness level. Technology, it must be ready, of course. But the difficulty, in my opinion, is to prove the integration and that the integration is ready. We can operate and we can manage the graded modes. We can manage the graded mode, and we already think of all the possibilities and the degraded modes. So it's very important to, when we push a new technology, to ensure its technology readiness level, TRL, of course, but the integration readiness level as well. It's very important.
Oh, thanks. All clear.
Yeah, speaking about that, you know, I think battery trains can be considered a competitor for electrifications to some extent. Obviously, for different reason. You know, for trams, as Jason said, it's mainly because people maybe do not want to see the lines up in the air. And actually, in Birmingham, we have a battery train. Battery tram has been operating over the last 1.5 years, I think, in the city center. So it's not traveling for a very long distance. It's probably around a kilometer, but it's a quite steep hill. You know, it needs to go upstairs into the central square, and it's been built by CAF, in a Spanish company, and is actually operating for more than a year right now. And the plan is to have, you know, a stretch of around 2 kilometers without the catenary using the battery. But this is not the only case. So there are in the UK several cases of usage of battery trains due to the delays in many cases of the electrification programs, which has been started and posed many times. And I think, as you probably know, the UK is a bit behind, you know, the rest of Europe in terms of percentage of electrified lines. And to enable electrification of transport and getting rid of diesel, you know, batteries could be a potential good solution. Has been trialed already. It's a project called IPEMU in Anglia, East Anglia, which has been successful from Bombardier. And I would say this is pretty much a competitor to this technology, which is something that could be a different technology that might take on compared to electrification systems. So as we were saying before, you know, sometimes innovations can be outside, you know, what we are thinking, and can be taken on because of other reason, which could be, for example, the time of getting authorizations to electrify lines, the disruption involved with all the works, and the people that don't want to see this work around their houses. So it could be a lot of reasons that it could be completely be very distant from what we think about efficiency and all the stuff.
I think you're bringing a very interesting topic here on the table, indeed, with the battery solution. So you took the name of competitors. Let's see if it's really a competitor or maybe a complementary solution. So this is, I would say, rather a point of view rather than a straight position.
Yeah, I mean, I think for longer distances, of course, it is no competition at all, because battery trains can definitely go for 100 kilometers, so up to 100 kilometers, maybe less. So we are not really talking about competition in all the aspects. But I mean, in some very niche applications where the case for electrification is not clear, then it might be a further element of thinking.
On the other hand, we cannot disregard that those solutions with battery, the solution with hydrogen train are progressing as well. So the autonomy will also increase, and maybe indeed at some point, 5 years, 10 years, the autonomy of the solution will be, I would say, as per a train that is operating in an electrified line. So here we are talking about solutions that might be developed in 5, 10, 15 years. So we are maybe in the same time scale that the development and the maturity of this hydrogen or battery solution. So my question is the following. Should we continue to invest money in electrified network, integrating that, if we consider that for different reasons, because we are confident about the maturity of those batteries and hydrogen trend in 10 years, 15 years. If we take into account the price of the maintenance of the overhead lines, the price of maintenance to install new lines, etc., maybe we should, I would say, refocus our effort within the rolling stock, so with battery solution, rather than to work really on the electrification and on the, I would say, optimized network 9 kilowatt as we discussed before. So it's a bit provocative, I would say, the question, but I think it's worth to be discussed. So I don't know if anybody of you have a point of view on that.
Yeah, I think we have to be very careful with that. If you consider the efficiency of the complete system, I think that regarding hydrogen, this is not so interesting. Now, in France, we have political people who are interested by the hydrogen, but yeah, I think this is not a good way, because with the electrification system we use the electrical energy with a very good efficiency, and this is not the case for hydrogen. I think battery on trains is very interesting for a short distance, but not for long distance electrification. And regarding the history of the railway electrification, we have to keep in mind what happens in the USA. At the beginning of the 20th century, they had a lot of railway line which were electrified, and I think just after the Second World War, it was a time to go for the renewing of this electrification system, and they decided to stop the electrification system. The contact line were dismounted, and then decide to use diesel engine for the railway traction. And now, if we have a look to our scenario of sustainable development, is completely stupid.
Yeah, of course, it all depends on the. When we talk about hydrogen, so producing hydrogen has a lot of costs. It's not that cheap today. We don't have maybe a complete analysis of the carbon footprint of hydrogen, though we don't know for sure. For trains, battery trains, it's the same thing. So we know that batteries can not emit does a low carbon footprint locally, but when you make the batteries from A to Z, it's not the same impact. So yeah, we have the similar problem historically.
So I agree with you with the situation today. I think in terms of autonomy, we are all aligned. In terms of indirect impact from this solution, we are all aligned. What about in 15 years? There's a lot of money that is put in the battery solution, a lot of money to put in the effort, while in the other hand, I would say, in the work we're currently doing the railway, maybe there's less money. We have the point of Dresden and Pietro on the large scale demonstrators, the difficulty to put that. So yeah, midterm perspective, are we going in the right way, I would say? And again, a bit provocative intentionally. Are we going to the right way with this topic? So
it's hard to know if you're going in the right way. I mean, have a look into the many examples nowadays with trucks being electrified and now, our lines being put on top of a motorway. So we are now discussing, should the railway go and become electric vehicle railway, and people from a trucks want to become a trains. And it's a confusing. There is a lots of playing with the technology in every segment. In Switzerland, I don't know for France, but in Switzerland we have, I think, 3 startups focusing on the electrical planes, and they are really working very hard, raising funds, developing technologies, not for a Boeing type of passenger, but for replacing Cessna as a small training plane with electrical plane with battery packs, actually 2 of them for redundancy, 2 times 50 kilowatt converter, typically a 6-phase machine for redundancy, and 45 minutes autonomy flight, so that you can train a pilot, how to operate a plane. And this is like something which is very, very alive, popular topic. And then you go to US and you have, I don't know, 50 startups promising vertical takeoff taxis, drone muscle up to carry passengers. So there is a playing everywhere. I mean, what Philip says, it's the same thing, I mean, I charge my phone, in office with cable, at home wirelessly, and I accept that wirelessly I'm not efficient because, nothing is more efficient than a passing electron through these conductors. But it's a convenient, so now if trains also should be convenient, 3 quarters are full of batteries and 1 for passengers, that can be done. We have technologies that we transfer batteries all around, exceeding 100 kilometers. But Pietro says it can go 1,000 if I put just the batteries instead of people. But that's not the point, I guess, of this. Switzerland is a fairly, electrified completely. Lots of power energy comes from a hydro. Old machine rotating groups are all, not all, but slowly being replaced by the direct MMC, directly connected from a 3-phase network. And the network is completely owned by SBB. I suspect it's a similar in some way in France. It's a kind of a very, very little more you can do other than improve efficiency. And to improve efficiency, you are allowed to use everything from software, hardware, scheduling, whatever. It's all technologies are constantly being deployed just to improve efficiency, energy efficiency. And I think nobody wants to do less in that particular aspect.
So my experience about batteries and hydrogen. So about batteries, I agree with Professor Ladoux that can be useful for short distance or, for example, for emergency or last mile operation, but not for long distance, because the main issue, one of the main issue, is the charging time. So with the electrification, we distribute energy with quite small power continuously. Instead, with battery, you need to concentrate the providing of the energy to the trains in a short time. So the charging power dramatically increases. So you have a problem to keep the train stopped for the charging time that can needs hours. and you have an impact on the grid because you increase the power. About hydrogen, now we have a project here in Italy that will be ready for the Winter Olympic Game of 2026. And one of the main issues in this case, okay, we keep apart efficiency because they produce hydrogen from fossil fuels, okay. We don't mention environmental aspect, but one of the main issues is related to safety. So hydrogen, so if you have this hydrogen on board, especially in Italy where we have many tunnels, so we have to discuss about safety reasons. So I think that the electrification should solve all these problems. So is efficient, is safe, and can, with our projects, can minimize the impact towards the mix. So I think we expect more electrification projects.
Okay, so long life to electrification, if I understand.
In addition, I would maybe add the comment that electrification is a complementary solution to batteries, to train batteries. So obviously, train batteries are a way to do travel between one point and another. But yeah, the autonomy is a problem. So I think electrification could be complementary. Either if we want to charge, so if we want to charge the train quickly, it poses some very big challenges. But if we electrify partially a line, I think it can be complementary to existing technologies, charging technologies. But yeah, and in conclusion, also, I think electrification is a technology that has given its it is a proof technology, so it is very widely used. But yeah, I think like Drazen said, so it depends on the convenient, and having a panel of several ways of doing railway travels is a very good thing. And yeah, so I look at all these technologies as complementary, and each situation is justified or is justifying each technology. So depending on the situation, we have this technology which is cheaper on the long run, and etc. So yeah.
Thank you, Mohammed. Maurice, you were mentioning I would say the indirect cost of the indirect impact, let's call it like that, of the production of hydrogen, especially in the case in Italy that is made with fuel technology. And I would like to take some point to maybe to bring a last topic. So something that you were proposing, Pietro, the role of the renewable source for future AC and DC electrification system. So what is your view on that? How can we bring this renewable source in order to electrify the network?
Well, I think there is a clear policy guidance, around this. So transport must be decarbonized in a way or another. So there is a lot of pressure now to go to these net zero economies, and railway needs to be involved in that process and be active and follow what was going to be sooner or later a requirement, and that could be as simple as just purchasing energy, buying energy from people who sell renewables. Because, for example, in my home, I got a contract supply for 100% renewable, but I'm not really sure if the electrons are green, the one going through my wire. Not really sure about that. But that is a way I can say proudly that I am fully decarbonized because I'm buying green electricity. So that could be a very simple way for railway companies to do that. But it is clear that at some point there will be competition. If everyone wants to buy renewable, at some point the request for renewable will be more than the amount of renewables that we have. So it's a matter of time before we start to competing between buying this electricity from the people who sell it, and then it will start to bring the point, we probably need more production of renewables, so otherwise we can't reach the amount that we need. And then if railways will be ready, to accept that, there is a number of ways to integrate those into the electrification system. So we have seen in this project, these ideas about direct feeding, which probably are a bit futuristic right now, because they why do we need that? The grid is strong, and the PVs might contribute with one train every 50. So it doesn't make any sense. And I mean, we can accept that, but we don't have to think about what is the situation now, but we need to think about in the future, when we are going to need every single PV of 100 watts by every single household. They might need to contribute to our railways to be 100% green in a market where we're looking highly really looking for renewable power available, where there will be higher competition than it is today. So yeah, technologies again can be open. There will probably be tons of different ways of doing this, and I think in the end it will be again a matter of business case to which one of these solutions will be adopted.
You named the word requirement when you were saying that. So same question that before. Do you see it more like it has to be imposed, for example, that self-resolve in 10 years you need to deploy 20% of renewable source in order to feed your system? Or should we try to demonstrate that with this renewable source that are put at the level of the substation, etc., there could be a benefit for SNCF Réseau to decrease their energy bill, etc. So what is your view? And I would say at short term, because again, it's not in 20 years you can take a decision. It has to be no if you want really to meet our objective in terms of CO2 reduction. So regulation or demonstrating the feasibility, the cost, the benefit from a cost point of view on the in the market.
Yeah, so it's not a simple question, because we, in the last 10 years, for example, in the last decade, we already have some fixed objective about reducing this amount of power, integrating more renewables, and obviously we haven't attained these objectives. So I think we need both motivations. We need to demonstrate that some sites are able to produce green energy, reduce carbon footprint, enhance power quality. And this, I think the demonstrating part is more important than fixing the objective and try to attain them. Because by demonstrating, we are sure that we are on the right way. However, yeah, so fixing objectives, it could be some motivation, but I'm not sure, at least from my personal point of view, if this could be attainable, of the numbers we fixed ourselves are attainable, but they can be as a motivation part to accelerate the demonstrating sites. So yeah, I think the demonstrating sites are very important and are the main are the important part of trying and to reach green production or green energy. I don't know if I answered your question, Sebastian, but yeah, I think we have to have both motivations, but with a little enhance of focus on demonstrating.
Yeah, sure. And I don't think there's a right answer. It's exchange of view in this regard, as per the previous topic.
Yeah, I mean, if I can say another thing, I think at some point, policy will impose this on everyone, and I think it's just a matter of getting ready. So we probably need some good people with a lot of entrepreneurship. They might take a little bit of risk and try to get ready, and maybe with some demonstrator, with the help of some funding as well, from EU community, to take the risk and be ready when this will happen. And because these players will then have a competitive advantage and will be able to have the bigger share of the market. The other, at some point, will just have to trail they will be behind, because they will take years to develop competitive technologies, and then these people who are taking the risk will see a lot of benefits. So the matter is finding these people with an appetite for risk, which there might not be so many in Europe.
And from your perspective, if we compare, I would say, this part of the project, so basically integrating the renewables source within the electrified network, to compare the previous discussion and also the I would say the point of view that the difficulties so raised by Dresden for a large scale demonstrator for to reach and optimize a 9 kilovolt network. Do you see that the effort and the risk are lower in this specific area to integrate renewable source into the traction electrical system? Or do you think this is exactly the same issue, that we'll face difficulty to have authorization, we'll have difficulty to find, I would say, people to put the money for that believe in this? Or maybe it's more simple than the previous research area?
I mean, I can just try to comment, because I've been involved into a few other working groups with, let's say, similar goal on a European level. Everything is related about energy efficiency, but then, of course, you can go into various domains, whether it's a household or a PV or whatever. So ultimately, of course, to derive these policies to be fair and yet enabling energy efficiency, which then clearly can be done through a certain subset of technologies, which kind of become obvious in the process of that, really requires, hearing everybody's side, because you really need to kind of not have a lobbying so strong that it will be, at the end of the day, only one supplier capable of meeting those EU regulations. And this means that this is not a quick process. This may take 2-3 years of a working group working to derive a one number which may be whatever efficiency of a train or a maximum consumption per passenger, or whatever is the metrics you use in traction. And the second part, renewables, I mean, they are all around. It's okay, maybe France with the 90 nuclear substations doesn't kind of emit that message immediately, but isn't it SNCF free to decide to buy electricity from a railway, from a utility, or to install your own PV park in a field close to the line? Do you have that freedom?
We kind of have a freedom to choose the producer. Yeah, so we do have this freedom, but to answer just the initial question of Sebastian, whether by having a demonstrating site, you will always end up with some issues, regulatory issues, standard issues, but it would always be treatable at a human scale level. So, for example, if you want to install a PV cells on the site of a substation and do the demonstrating that with the converters, you obviously you will have to go through administrative paperwork, etc. But I think it would be acceptable because it is something that it is in the scope of research, and yeah, it will have certainly some barriers, but not that much. So this small step will allow, from my opinion, to the development of, or to the development of the NTAP solution. And yes, it will be acceptable by all the partners, even by the lobbies. They will not. I think they will not. So a lobby which is selling another type of solution, competitive solution to the demonstrator I'm talking about. So an example, a demonstrator of renewable sources. It will not have a lot of action, lobbying actions, because it's on a small scale. So yeah, so demonstrating sites, small demonstrating sites are the way to go to install a big scale technology. And I don't see, sorry, Drazen, but I don't see the, I haven't understood correctly the questions regarding the energy and the demonstrating site.
No, just to kind of because talking to the policies, say that your company has to demonstrate being a green, which is to say having a certain significant energy consumption generated from that. Are you free to decide I own or I buy?
Currently, we give this choice, this freedom to the rolling stock operator. So we know that rolling stock operators, which consume the final energy, has the freedom to choose the producer, the energy producer, and the energy we transfer to the trains and the consumers is invoiced on the basis of this choice. So indirectly, we give this freedom to the operator. But on the other hand, the costs of transmission and distributions are not. We don't have this freedom on choosing which producer we buy these losses, quote unquote losses. So we already give this choice for the rolling stock operators. And if we think of installing PVs, for example, so PVs would serve for producing energy. We can either use it to use it directly with the transmission system operator, so meaning that we sell it directly to them. Yeah, so we already give this freedom to the end consumer.
Excuse me. About that, I would like to introduce you a project in Italy. We designed a substation, in this case made by IGBT, so bidirectional, 10 megawatt in Forlì, in Emilia Romagna. Now, from now, probably two or 3 months, it will be ready. And so we can do some tests on that. And the voltage is 3 kilovolt, or between 2,600 till 4,000 volt. So 4,000 volt, yes. And there is also a supercapacitor in order to capture the energy of a brake of a train, 15 kilowatt hour, and so a braking phase of about 20 seconds. And so we can do all the tests on this substation. This is a very interesting setup made by RFI and with our contributor, Polytechnic Milan.
So just to understand, is it supercapacitors?
Supercapacitor, because in Italy there is a problem between the AC grid. The owner is Terna, and they don't want to have any energy back to the grid from the railway. So in this case, we made this bank of a supercapacitor, and in order to test the braking and also the icing of the line, of the catenary, and other activities. This is placed in the same place of the substation, but the idea is that supercapacitors may be placed in the middle between two substations in order to supply or to maintain or to control the voltage and the quality of the.
Yeah, we already have some capacitor banks and some SVCs in France as well. But the system you have in Italy, does it allow maybe thinking of new technologies, testing new technologies on it?
in this case, the idea in Italy, all the substation towards 3 kilovolt DC are made by diodes. So this is a new idea in order to manage in a better way the energy flows in the railways, and to control the voltage, and to control also manage the current between a diode substation and the IGBT substation. So
okay.
So there is some ideas.
An idea by the Italian infrastructure operator is also in the future to connect photovoltaic generators to the low voltage section of the supercapacitors in order to reuse these converters to supply directly the contact line. And another important synergy, in my opinion, between railway infrastructures, but in general transportation infrastructures and renewable, is related to the power electronics, so to the power converters. So for example, at the beginning, we sought to use the electronic converter inside using wind turbines to realize these substations, because the power part is exactly the same. So if you analyze, for example, now 10 megawatt wind turbine, they have power converters with the DC section that is close to the 9 kilovolts. So the power part can be for a fixed installation can be quite ready. So the problem is maybe that they're only stock in this case. So how to translate the same electronics on board. And this substation that mentioned Francesco actually use the same converters that are used on board the locomotives. So 10 megawatt locomotives, so for quadrant plus traction, are transformed in reverse the power, transformed in these substations. So, for example, there is here in Italy a company that use the same machine and same converters to produce wind turbines and to produce the motor drives for the cable car line. So it is possible to share these electronics among different use.
Okay, thank you, Maurice, for this last statement. I think basically, even though we are a little bit ahead of schedule, that we have been addressing all the points that was foreseen during this roundtable. So I would like to thank all the participants for these very interesting exchanges on the various points that we put on the table. Philippe, Christina, I give you maybe the floor for the last words before closing this this interesting workshop. You'll be also in charge of the wrap up, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Christine is with me. Okay. So of course I want to thank all the participants. It was a very interesting meeting, and I think that Christine will prepare a newsletter regarding this event.
Yes. I don't know if we can have the newsletter very soon, but we can do a news anyways and do the newsletter later if we don't have all the content. But we could do a news at the beginning before the summer, and we see if we can do also the newsletter, or we wait for after the summer. I don't know if you can all be ready to do it right now. So let's discuss that afterwards, and we have the recording of the roundtable. Okay.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah.
A pleasure to meet you all.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Albeit virtually.
Yeah, most of us we know each other.
I wish you all the best to conclude your respective projects, and hopefully we'll have a lot to I would say to disseminate also during your project closure. So good luck for the end of the project.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Speak to you
Thank
soon.
you,
Thank
everyone.
Bye.
Good afternoon.
for
Bye.
sharing this
Thank
event.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you tomorrow,
Bye.
Philip.
Bye.
Yeah. See you tomorrow, Rasen.
See you tomorrow. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.